Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no, will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department? What did I say? We don't want no more police. Is that clear? We don't want people with guns toting around in our community, shooting us down. You have an answer? It is a yes or a no. It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department? It's important that we hear this because if y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. If y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. And if he says no, guess what the we gonna do next year? What'd you say?
I do not support the full abolition of the police.
All right, get the out of here. Go.
All right, there it is from the weekend, by the way. That was Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry was booed pretty much off stage. You heard the main question, will you commit to defunding the police? And he reiterated yesterday that he doesn't support abolishing the city's police force, which now apparently there is a veto-proof council there. And the fact that is going to happen. And the Minneapolis City Council announced they have a veto-proof push to disband the police in the aftermath of the incident with George Floyd, the death of George Floyd. There is universal agreement. If we're going to start somewhere, let's start there. There is no, I don't see anybody anywhere going out there liking at all what they saw. You know, I think that shocked, rightly so, the conscience of good people all across the country. And we now know that there's a second-degree murder charge against the officer involved in the incident. And the other officers that were surrounding, they're charged with aiding and abetting in record time. But so as a result, now we have the Minneapolis City Council announcing a veto-proof push to disband. So I guess they're going to disband it. Supporters of the move told Fox, we recognize that we don't have all the answers about what a police-free future looks like, but our community does. We're committed to engaging with every willing community member in the city of Minneapolis over the next year to identify what safety looks like for you. Then the mayor, of course, booed out this was I don't know, there's a big town hall, if you will, or a protest. So what are you going to do? You had Senator Mitt Romney. He was there. Congresswoman Omar was there. You have one thing is conflating, though. You know, you have groups of people saying Black Lives Matter, and then you have the group Black Lives Matter. And in many instances, when you have agitated groups, Black Lives Matter had talked about, remember that, well, we might police our own communities and we might arm ourselves. And I'm not sure what that would look like. But if you remember, this is now long standing with Black Lives Matter. You know, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. Pigs in a blanket. Fry them like bacon. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds around the rest of the country. And Omar also saying that, we don't want your damn reforms. We don't want the slowly dying of our communities. In New York, you have Comrade de Blasio. Now, he's given in, and he is now vowing to defund the police in New York City, at least cut off funding to the NYPD. So that has moved there. Protesters add defund the police to Black Lives Matter mural near the White House. But the movement now is moving to different cities in different ways. In Los Angeles now, they're talking about as much as $150 million in cuts. The budget is $1.8 billion. The mayor now saying $150 million is going to be taken away from that. There's talk of it in Philadelphia and D.C. and elsewhere. Now, as it relates to politics, the president is like, nope, I'm for law and order. You know, if the question is, as you watch these cities, you watch all of this go on, I don't know if many people are really paying attention to it, but 17 people now have been killed in what liberal Democrats and the mob and the media are telling us, quote, mostly peaceful anti-cop protests. Mostly 17 people, I'm reading from the Epic Times, have been killed so far. ranging in age from 18 to 77. Most of those who died were either current or former law enforcement officers or just innocent bystanders who got caught up in a violent situation. We have the oldest casualty, 77-year-old David Dorn. They did find the people there, and I'll get to that in a second, and they've been charged in that case out of St. Louis. He was shot to death while protecting a jewelry store in St. Louis from looters, and Dorn had served on the city's police force for 38 years. You have 18-year-old Dorian Morrell was shot dead in Indianapolis, and according to the Indianapolis Star, he was walking around the downtown area after the protest, got into an altercation over a gas canister and lying on the ground. Barry Perkins, 29-year-old protester, was run over by a FedEx tractor trailer in St. Louis after two men threatened the driver with guns. Fearing for his life, the driver began driving while Perkins was stuck on the converter dolly between the two trailers, and he died later in the hospital. You have a 22-year-old person shot. I mean, I could just go through every name of people. This is now having a very dramatic impact on innocent people, as we warned would happen. And if you defund the police, it would get considerably worse. President has been out there every day pretty much begging and pleading, because it's up to the states, it's up to the governors, it's up to the mayors to ask for the guard help to be brought in. You know, it's a very high bar to get to the Insurrection Act, where the president would then have to take total control. I am I've been a little bit of two minds on this, but I'm not comfortable with that at all, because now we have our military confronting American civilians. And it's really because the governors and the mayors refuse to do their jobs, because they do have ways of handling this, but they're allowing it to spiral out of control. They put in curfews that are meaningless. Nobody's listening to them. And so in that sense, it's getting worse and worse. There was this woman, Bender, that you just heard. And, you know, in the middle of the night when your home is broken into, who would you call? She says, yes, well, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors, and I know, and myself too, that I know that comes from a place of privilege. I'm like, the first line of defense for a lot of people is calling the police. Now, I just happen to, for all of my life, I just kind of know that there's got to be some preparedness on your own in life, because sometimes when you call the police, even with a quick response, they may not be there fast enough. A lot of confrontational situations, they happen, you know, in seconds, and it's all over by the time the cops get there. The cops will be the first to tell you. It's not that they don't want to help. We just got this in because, you know, the president has been railing against Biden and radical Democrats on this defund the police movement. And Trump uses defund police as, you know, basically challenging Joe Biden. You have a Biden surrogate. An AOC is supporting this defund effort. Anyway, so Biden and his campaign, and Kamala Harris gave a disjointed answer. She's now considered one of the top frontrunners to be chosen as Biden's vice president. But anyway, he now finally has broke with Black Lives Matter, the group, in a statement released Monday by his campaign, saying he does not support the nationwide defund police movement. And Biden does not believe the police should be defunded. Quote, he hears and shares the deep grief and frustration of those calling out for change, and he's driven to ensure that justice is done and that we put a stop to this terrible pain. Well, we had a lot of this in the Biden-Obama administration, too. And we haven't forgotten Ferguson and Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman and Cambridge Police and Freddie Gray and Baltimore. And so far, he has no answers, as usual. And whenever he does have an answer, it's incoherent. All right, so Minneapolis' city council, I guess they're going to lead the way. You know, if everybody doesn't want the police that is in politics and they're out there supporting this effort, defund the police, and I think it's then at that point in time, then I guess the police protection that we afford to politicians, and I would strongly be against that, taking that away. But if they're consistent, it can't be, well, we don't want police, we want to defund them, but not for me. I get to keep my police. I get to keep my guards that are armed with me at all times, so I get protected. Now, my position is I want all politicians protected. We can't have mob rule here. And you see people that are trying to gin up. They're peaceful protesters, but in come the agitators. income people, staging items that could be hurled at the police, or, the Molotov cocktails or the out of control looting and rioting. At that point, they're not peacefully protesting what happened to George Floyd. They're not honoring his memory, in my opinion, either. Then you've got in the city of Chicago, 18 murders in 24 hours. If people have been hearing this, they want to have conversations. But then as soon as somebody says something that, even if somebody says, that they believe that we're all children of God and all lives matter, which I happen to believe. I believe there's one God, and he created every man, woman, and child on this earth. And that God is our Father, and his Son is Jesus. That's what I believe. And that he is the creator of all things. I believe our rights are God-given, endowed by our Creator. And yet, if you don't say just the Black Lives Matter, if you say all lives matter, well, that's viewed as controversial. Now you have police now not only kneeling on the ground as a show of solidarity, but then you also have people laying down. One guy laid down, I guess, a sergeant or a lieutenant in one police department, I think, for a solid 8 minutes. Or that now they're bringing this all back as it relates to Colin Kaepernick, and what supposedly his movement was all about. So we're going to watch this all very closely. Cory Booker say we're over-policed as a society. But, when if you want to get to root causes, and I like to get to root causes and solutions in life and solve problems in life, when you look across the board in this country and you look at the biggest cities, the most liberal states that spend the most money in terms of, say, education. Look, here's two things that are just fundamental. If you believe we're all equal in the eyes of God and God created all of us, okay. We all agree what happened to George Floyd can't happen again. Okay, number two. Now we believe God created every man, woman, and child. Number three, we all believe the word education to bring forth from within. God put in every soul talent and abilities. Okay, if you believe that, now you have to first have a safe environment because human beings are flawed and we see the violence every weekend and they've never done anything in Chicago to ever fix all of that violence. Okay, so first we need a safe, protected environment so that people can go about and use their gifts and their freedoms to pursue the dreams that will make them happy and successful for the rest of their lives. The next thing that they failed on a spectacular level, especially minorities in inner cities, the numbers don't lie. It's decades of Democratic rule. It is decades. How does anybody not look at Chicago? And this has been going on. And even Joe and Barack's home city, they didn't do a thing to stop the violence in Chicago. It is unconscionable that they've allowed that to continue. And nobody has said no more. Defunding the cops, by the way, is not going to be the answer. Having safety is key and crucial. The next thing, the unholy alliance with teachers unions and Democrats. You can't fire all the bad teachers. And yet you can have year after year, failure after failure. If you want to reach the God-given talent you have, well, we've got to nurture the educational process. We have failed America's treasure, all of our children. In so many of these cities with failing public schools. Now, every 2-4 years, Democrats want to vote, but then they make all sorts of promises. They'll tell you every conservative is a racist. Then they do nothing. Absolutely, positively nothing, because they haven't resolved the problem. How do we bring the best out of people if you're first not safe and secure in your own home, in your own towns, in your own cities? Because it's happened for decades. Defund the police? Okay, well, look at what we're now watching. 17 people killed in, quote, mostly peaceful anti-cop protests. That's a lot of people. And that's with the police there, but they didn't take the help in any of these cities. They're saying, no, we don't want any help. You got shootings and murders rising dramatically in New York City last week amid the backdrop of these protests. You got 18 murders in 24 hours. Chicago, most violent day in 60 years. Hardworking father killed just before 1 a.m. West Side High student murdered 2 hours later. A man killed among the South Side. Looting at a cell phone store, 12:30. College freshman who hoped to become a correctional officer, gunned down 4:25 p.m. Chicago, just more violence and more violence. But this has now become the cause celeb. I would like to know what their answer is, because they can't answer it. And when the city council, I guess president, was asked the question earlier today, and we'll get to this later in the program, there was no answer. Well, I'm not sure how this is all going to work out, but we're going to defund the police. What does that look like? What does that mean? You know, none of these cities, you look at these big cities, decades of Democratic rule hasn't worked. If you look at the socioeconomic records for minorities in terms of unemployment and job creation, record lows, Donald Trump. By the way, and they were off with the latest model by 10.5 million with the, 2.7 million new jobs created last month.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done. And so in the very immediate, we have to lean into whatever changes we can make in our existing police department. You know, I think we look to cities like Camden, New Jersey, that completely restructured their department as we build up systems. And we've already done that. We are not starting from scratch. We have invested in community-based safety strategies.
That's not really an answer. That's not one that I feel comfortable knowing, because then I think then you're going to have more people that are going to be, taking measures themselves, and they're not trained professionals. I do believe one thing for sure, though, and this gets to my study of martial arts now the last 7 years, and I study an eclectic blend of many of them, and a mixed blend from Krav Maga to Kempo to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, situational street fighting, sticks, blades, firearms, etc. Mostly defensive, situational stuff. But who is the average person going to call? Who's grandma and grandpa going to call? Who's mom and dad going to call? Who's anybody going to call? Most people don't want to spend years training. Now, I would say that there absolutely can be dramatic improvements to police departments in the sense that, some places it's 6 weeks, it's 12 weeks, 6 months, whatever. Now they all learn how to shoot a firearm, and they have to be proficient in the use of a firearm. But that's the last thing you want to use in any conflict. You want a peaceful resolution to protect citizens on the streets of whatever city you happen to be working on. There's got to be more education. I mean, for the life of me, as I've been saying, I cannot understand why this officer did not know the instantaneous danger, never mind 8 minutes, of putting the pressure on George Floyd's neck. I mean, I was horrified by it because I know so much about the anatomy. That is the most vulnerable part of the human anatomy for a police officer. Now, over the years, there's been a transformation in many police forces. For example, if you're looking at the identity politic of this, well, for example, in New York City, it is not a predominantly white police force. Hispanic, Asian Americans, Black Americans, they represent the majority. Chicago, same thing, or I think it's about 51-49 in Chicago, predominantly minority. Los Angeles Police Department, 49% of their sworn officers are Hispanic, 30% white, 10% African American. St. Louis is more predominantly white. Atlanta Police Department, the statistics are a little bit old, but that was, I believe, as of 2013, 58% of sworn-in officers in Atlanta were African-American. If you look at D.C., 60% of the officers are African-American. San Antonio, 51% are Hispanic-American. And so there's been diversity issues addressed for long periods of time now. in terms of the hiring of police officers in cities all across the country. And, I guess a lot of it has to do with the demographic of the city, et cetera, et cetera. But again, if they're not trained properly, we need better training. We always talk about, lifelong education, continuing education. Well, there needs to be continuous training. I train every day, and, I can tell you I'm still learning so much every day. There are effective, non-lethal ways to deal with people that are even resisting arrest that I don't see any of these cops are trained in the use of. You can grab somebody's 2 fingers if you know how to do it and bring them right to their knees. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. That's that. But I don't think most officers are trained that way. Now, I've talked a lot about this with my sensei. Is like he trains. Now, my sensei's got an incredible background. He's got so many different black belts, arts. It's been his passion for 35 years. Now, he also is a lawyer, but he does this because this is where his passion is. And he trains a lot of the cops around where the dojo is for free because he knows that they're not properly trained. And the cops want to learn how to use non-lethal methods. I've never been the biggest fan of the current iteration of stun guns either, because, you got that wire. It's awkward. You get one shot. That's all you got. That then leaves so many officers with only one option if things really start getting hairy, and that's their sidearm. And that's the last option. You don't want to go there. And a lot of times that's all they have. That's all they've been trained in the use of. There's got to be better training. It's got to be ongoing education. I think that's a big part of it. There should be liaisons in the community, because if we really believe we want to get every single American in every city to a point where their God-given talents come out, the first thing they need is safety and security in their neighborhoods. We're not even close to doing this. And there's been no sense of urgency to solve those issues, Chicago being the biggest case in point. Democratic rule for decades, every Democratic governor, every Democratic mayor. They haven't solved the problem. Even the president of the United States, Barack Obama, that's his home city. And we read about the violence all through his 8 years as being president. I remember one night I started scrolling the names of all the people that were shot. All the people that were shot and killed in the city of Chicago. Well, that's our American family, every one of those names. We don't hear all of those names, but that's our American family. We don't want any Americans dying. We don't want to watch videos like we saw that shocks the conscience like we saw last. Nobody wants to see that. And these things can be prevented. Now, in spite of what a lot of people are saying, if you look at justthenews.com, that's John Solomon's new website, and there's a recent poll that came out. Now, even in the midst of all these heightened tensions, et cetera, most Americans, including African Americans, have a favorable view of their local police department. Anytime I see cops where I live, I always go over and say hi. So there's got to be better community relations wherever they happen to be working. You want to have a good relation in case you don't want to be meeting the first time you meet is in a hostile situation. But you have to first restore the order. You have to have the police to restore the order, or you're not going to ever have an environment where we can bring the best out of our kids and honor, our national treasure. We should not pick up a paper every Monday to find out how many people were shot and how many people were shot and killed in Chicago every weekend without addressing the problem. I mean, these are problems that you can solve. There are solutions that are instantly available. Defunding the police is not the best solution. And with all the talk, by the way, that, the president's poll numbers are down, and I've been looking at a lot of what they're printing, and I'm not buying a lot of it, but I see different things in the polls than other people apparently are seeing. By the way, there are 25 states, lowest graduation rate highlighted, at the bottom. And when you look at the states that are the worst, I think you can probably predict where they are. It's sad that we have not made the decision to hold people accountable. First, safety, better schools, safety in schools. It's like Joe Clark. Remember the movie Lean on Me? Morgan Freeman did an amazing job in that movie. I've interviewed the real Joe Clark. He goes in a school in New Jersey, and he's known for a bullhorn, and he's known for a baseball bat that he carried around the school. Very controversial. But he loved the kids enough to say, hey, first thing he did on the job was get rid of every kid that was selling drugs, every kid that was part of a gang, every kid that was disruptive, and every kid that prevented everybody else from getting an education. He took control, and they had this big test come up, and then the kids in the end loved him because he loved them and believed in them and believed that they have the gifts and the talents. And that's the institutional failure, frankly, of decades of liberalism. The most success that we have had for minority Americans in the economy has been the last 3+ years leading up to coronavirus. Record after record low unemployment. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, youth unemployment, African American youth unemployment. And I was so happy Friday because I didn't think we'd see these numbers till we got July's numbers in August. But May numbers, they were off their projections by 11 million jobs. They thought we were going to lose around 8 million more. But Americans, their ingenuity, they want to get back to work. And they want to get back to work quickly. And they're trying their best to get back to work. There's a lot at stake in 148 days here. I'll tell you that part. Rasmussen's had a poll, I think it was Friday, in spite of all that you're hearing in the media, that, the president's support with the African American community is at an all-time high. President wants to restore law and order. He wants peace in our streets. We can't live as a secure and safe society when anarchists are out there every night looting, destroying property. We see the violence, the loss of life as a result of this. I think there's no doubt justice will be swift in this case. And that what we saw with our own eyes is going to be resolved. If you go and you look all these states, for example, they have bail reform. New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois, limited bail. So we're arresting the leaders of the anarchy and those that want society disrupted, that plan on it and use peaceful protest. And they march amongst the peaceful protesters. Then the trouble starts. But if you don't restore order, that means every man, woman, and child in whatever city it happens to be happening in, they're not living a safe day that day. We have to get control of what's going on in these cities. To just this blanket blame the police. I mean, you could look at, go look up the statistic yourself. How many African Americans are murdered? I think the last year we had numbers for by police officers while unarmed. I believe the number, let me go back. I saw it here. 2018, it was 7,400 African Americans became homicide victims in that year. That's 7,400. That's our American family. We can't allow that to continue. We can't have those statistics. We're not protecting our national treasure, our family. Why hasn't that been solved all these years by all these grandiose, liberal mayors and governors? The ones that play the race card every 2 and 4 years against anybody that happens to be a conservative. Law and order will help people live free so then they can pursue their God-given talent and dreams. And if the school systems are failing, and a lot of them are, most of them in these big cities, then you've got to change something. And that means you're going to have to redo that system and make sure there's a safe environment that kids can learn. So the talent that God put in them will be brought out and they will be participating, successful men and women in our family, our American family. There's the answer. Then everyone wants to get off and start arguing about, Well, you shouldn't. You're not allowed to say all lives matter, or you're not allowed to say that I don't want to kneel. I only kneel for God. And then we blow off and we get sidetracked. We always get sidetracked. If you want the jurisdictions where the student reading scores, look, it's simple. Reading, writing, and math. They learn more about how to be politically correct kids. How many teachers are not doing their job? How big are the classrooms? We spend more per capita on kids' education than any other industrialized country on the face of the earth. And we're 37th. The last time I looked, probably lower now. Probably now we're 45. Who knows? We have ways to help people. If you believe in people, and I do, and they're created by God, we have a duty to protect them, and we have a duty for every child to give them the education that is the way to success and prosperity and happiness and a better life for them, their families, their kids, their grandkids.
This is more than reform. This is dismantling. Activists who support this are calling this a police-free future.
Yeah, and a lot of us were asked if we could imagine a future without police back in 2017 when we were running for office. And I answered yes to that question. To me, that future is a long way away, and it would take an enormous amount of investment in things that we know work to keep people safe. For a lot of folks in our community, stable housing is a safety issue. Having access to healthcare is a safety issue. And so I think one thing folks are asking is to stop investing so much money in this militarized police force and instead invest in the things that our community really needs. So, I know the statement was bold, and I stand by that bold statement.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police-free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done. And so in the very immediate, we have to lean into whatever changes we can make in our existing police department. I think we look to cities like Camden, New Jersey, that completely restructured their department as we build up systems. And we've already done that. We are not starting from scratch. We have invested in community-based safety strategies.
All right, there you have it. That was from the Minneapolis City Council, their president, Lisa Bender. And I'm not sure where this defund the police effort is ultimately going to end up, as they now have a veto-proof majority that they can do that. Kind of scary to me, because I think what we need is more policing. I think we need more training for sure. And I think we need, but we have not been protecting people in many cities across this country for a very long time. I don't think many people have paid as much attention to the city of Chicago as we have on this program and on TV, scrolling the names that you've never heard before. Many of them minorities that have been shot and murdered. 18 murders in 24 hours in Chicago over the weekend. 18 murders, 24 hours. I saw many young people that were killed this weekend. Well, that's part of our American family that's dying. And it's been happening all these years. And I don't remember anybody saying, hey, we got to get in here and protect our American family. This is our city. You see, with a lot of the looting and rioting and arson, the president's begging people here, I can send in more help to restore order and protect innocent people and protect innocent property. Nope. As a matter of fact, we're going to fire police. We're going to take their money away from them. OK, then who's going to protect you? Anyway, joining us now is Reverend C.L. Bryant, author of The Race for Freedom, senior fellow at Freedom Works. Vince Ellison back with us, conservative columnist, lecturer. He wrote the book, The Iron Triangle. Welcome both of you back to the program. Reverend, we'll begin with you. You and I have discussed these issues many, many times over the years. And you go, for example, you look at a city like Chicago. We always come back to, ground zero. I mean, it's beyond a dereliction of duty at this point that we haven't protected these communities.
It proves to us, Sean, that this whole thing is not about the death of a black man. This is about the visual of a white man who happens to be a police officer killing a black man. This is not about black lives, losing a black life. We lose black lives daily, as you pointed out. In Chicago alone, we lose that. So,
but one thing, Reverend, there's universal agreement here. When I saw that, I could not believe my eyes. It's unconscionable.
Oh, no, of course not.
There's nobody that I know that transcends politics, that part of it, for sure.
Yeah, but still the liberals use this, Sean, as a visual, as they always have. And the defunding of the police is also a tool of the liberals to fundamentally change this country. Who will it hurt the most? It'll hurt who liberals have been hurting for 50 years in this country. Poor black people. And it's time for black people to wake up and understand that you're being used as pawns in a game that is manipulating and has manipulated the black community for so long. And, Sean, it's time for us to stop it, face it, stop running from it. Let's have the conversation. Let's have it now, and I'm glad you have the courage to put us on.
Vince Ellison.
Hey, man, I'm happy to be with my good friend, C.L. Bryan. How you doing, C.L.?
Hey, Vince, how's everything, man?
Notice he doesn't say he's happy to be with his good friend Sean Hannity. I mean, it's just, hey, CL. Don't say, what about my good friend Sean Hannity?
My good friend Sean Hannity has pulled me off the ledge 100 times.
Yeah, I think I did, actually.
Vince, you got to be kind of cool now, because everybody ain't. Me and Sean have had that conversation. So, Sean, you're a good friend, and I love you, man. You're one of the best people I ever met in my life. And we see this thing. We understand what's going on. I mean, didn't I call it in my book? I said they were going to do exactly this. They were going to wait until they found an African-American man killed by a white man, and then they were going to start all of this trouble. That is what they do. They've always used black people for either entertainment or exploitation. There was a great piece that came out in the Post on June 4th, and they talked about how, in this piece from the Post, now interesting, they said there hasn't been any type of success in narrowing the gap between white income and black income since 1968. That's the whole civil rights movement. There hasn't been any success. Nevertheless, they continue doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. We are seeing the Democrat Party wrong, live and in living color. You're seeing what they are doing to the American people, rioting, killing, murdering, and they're applauding it. A friend of mine named
Listen,
Taylor,
we're dealing with a couple of things, though, Vince. In the immediate, everybody shares the outrage over what our eyes showed us. That can't happen in this country. That can't happen to anybody. But defunding the police, I don't believe is the answer. I do think if you really, I'm a kind of, you get to the root of the problem type of person. I don't believe in surfacey or feel goodism. And if you really want to solve problems, you got to first protect people in every community. If you want to solve problems, you got to educate every kid. You know, the failure is.
They know this. Yeah. These people aren't stupid.
No, he's right.
They are getting 90% of the black vote. Why should they change the thing? Why?
Right, and Sean, they use the same people.
I'll tell you why you change it, because what they're doing is failing, and you love your kids. That's why you do it.
Right, but Sean, this is the thing that has happened. They use the same people that black people have traditionally trusted throughout the decades, and they throw them up again. You see Al Sharpton flying like a vulture over another dead body. You don't see him doing this thing over the genocide that blacks are committing against each other in these cities like Chicago. You don't see that. So they're wanting to promote a visual of white men, a white cop in particularly, killing a black man. This is not about black lives. This is about providing those Democrats with a tool to try to corral and keep that black vote. And they're doing it through this emotionally charged issue, which was heinous. We hate it. There's going to be justice for it, but they're using it as a tool, and black people need to wake up. Black Lives, Black Voices for Trump, who I sit on their board, his board. I'm telling you, there are many out there who are seeing an awakening in this country, Sean.
Vince?
Sure, John. Black lives only matter to these people when a white man takes it. We are being used as pawns for these people again, and people are waking up. Donald Trump has been the first president to really talk directly to black people since Abraham Lincoln went to Richmond in 1865. And he's telling them what he's doing for them. His plan is it worked before COVID. It's going to work again, and this is why they are ramping this thing up, and it's going to get worse. People what COVID did. COVID tore the scab and the mask off of what the Democratic Party has been doing to the black community, and it shows the structural imbalance there that they have not prepared the black community to take on anything in this country. And now you have this rioting going on because black people woke up and they understood this. The Democratic Party's been lying for the last 50 years. They said if you give us your children, we'll educate them. They lied. If you kick out your men, we'll provide for you. They lied. They said that if you give us your guns, we'll protect you. They lied. And now the people are rioting because they said, you've been lying to me. It's like if you work all week and the guy says he's going to pay you, and then it's payday and he keeps your money. You're going to get mad about it. They've been voting for these people and supporting them for the last 50 years, and they've told them nothing but lies. And so what do they do now? They give them a parade. We can't give people bread, as Caesar says, give them a parade. Give them a riot. And then deflect and say that it's the white Republicans that are doing this. It's the white Republicans that are doing it. Donald Trump been in office for 3 years. And they are putting all of this at Donald Trump's feet. And it's amazing that they even have the job.
And it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And, Sean, I encourage everyone to go and get my film. My film kicked off a lot of this, Runaway Slave. It pointed out all this. And, Sean, you were one of the very first. You were one of the very first to put it up on your website. Go and get the award-winning Runaway Slave. Blexit, Walk Away, all of that. The black people, we need to have this discussion that we're having right now. It's the only way to get past the foolishness that we are engaged in. And believe me, folks, it's not what you think. It's what they're trying to sell you. They're trying to sell you a narrative, a visual, and they're ignoring the reality of blacks who are taking black lives. This is not a black lives. This is about a narrative. This is about a visual. Wake up. Let's
and then
walk
push
away
it
from all
every
of this.
single day. And you know what, Sean, a fellow traveler, guy that wrote my book, that read my book, he sent me a message and he said, his name is Gary Taylor. He said, Vince, he's a white guy. He said, I took your book to an Antifa meeting and used it as kryptonite and shut it down. He said, they could not refute any of your charges that this is being done by Iron Triangle in the black community. Most black preachers, CL is one of the exceptions, but most black preachers, most black politicians, and most civic organizers, Black Lives Matter, NAACP, you see them in full effect right now. Down there, acting like they don't want the riots to happen. Yes, they do. It's them. And they are getting paid. They are being financed. They are being taken care of by the people on the extreme left, and their job is to make sure the black people vote Democrat. It doesn't matter hook or by crook. Keep them exactly where they are. Keep that plantation operational at all costs. And that's what they're doing.
Sean, I'm a former president of the NAACP. I'm a former president of NAACP in Garland, 2 terms. What he has just said has been the way our community, the black community, has been manipulated. What happens when you privatize the police force? Well, people like me, I'm going to go and hire people to protect our community, right? That's one with the community. The poor black people and Democrats, the liberals have known this. They know that they become greater prey for those who are out there if, in fact, you take away the thin blue line. Wake up, black Americans. Wake up to what's going on. You're being hustled. You're being bamboozled. You're lied to about all of this. So let's do something different. It's time for us to try something different.
Well, Sean, you know what? I was on an urban radio station. I was on an urban radio station in Chicago this week talking to the black community. And at first it started out adversarial. By the time I was finished, I got about 10 black phone calls. And this is inner city, white where Obama and Jeremiah Wright are. By the time we were finished, every phone call I got was positive. Because I told them when they said, Vince, is there systematic racism in America? Are you denying that there's systematic racism in America coming from the police department? I said, sure it is. It's all coming from the Democratic Party. And then they stopped. I said, the Democratic Party controls every drug corner, every housing project, every failed school, every mayor, every police department, every sheriff's department, every jury, every jail that you put our black men in. They do it. They control the educational system. They control the breakdown of the family. Yeah. And when you put that right in their face and say, now, what are you going to do about it? And then they take your guns away so you can't defend yourself from the people that they say are hunting you. Now, rationalize that for me. That a free man.
All right, I got to put you guys. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to talk about other issues, and
I'm Jensen Karp, and I'm a comedy writer and diehard sports fan. And I'm terribly missing the athletes in sports I love. So I'm checking in on them with a podcast called The No Sports Report with Jensen Karp. Your favorite athletes, commentators, and legends from the sports world are revealing what they're doing now that the sport they love is suddenly gone and they're stuck on their couch just like the rest of us. Are they staying in shape? Are their kids heckling them as they attempt to homeschool? Did they almost burn down the house trying to make bread? Are they sleeping in their jerseys at night like I do? Oh, just me? Okay. Listen to the No Sports Report now and subscribe on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get podcasts.
All right, as we continue, they'll stay with us on the other side of this, Reverend C.L. Bryant and Vince Ellison. You know, now you saw what happened with the mayor who said he's not for defunding the police. What did you think of that reaction? We only have about 20 seconds for you each until the next half hour. C.L. Bryant.
Well, Sean, he has to have the courage of his conviction. Stand against that. Listen, anyone who stands against the agenda is going to be attacked. That's the new America that we're in. The only way to overcome it, stand against it. Stand anyway. Americans, stand up. That's what we're going to have to do. Stand up. That's what I'm encouraging all of us to stand up.
Vince, real quick, and then we'll play this state trooper in Georgia when we get back.
Yeah, he is reaping what he sowed. They've allowed this anarchy to take place and burning up cities and rioting, and they've excused it away, and now they're turning on him. He's been showing weakness, and now when you show weakness, the wolves will go straight for your throat. And he's getting bitten because he's been showing weakness, and he's been timid, and now he's getting what he sowed.
All right, quick break. More with them and your calls on the other side. 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program as we continue.
You won't hear the mainstream press talking about this stuff. Sean Hannity is on the radio.
I wouldn't have I'm supposed to be out of town this weekend with my wife. I took off today, this weekend, but I'm out here to make sure y'all safe. So don't go there with respect, okay? I have much respect, but I only kneel for one person.
And that's God.
God, okay.
And thank you.
All right, that was a Georgia state trooper, African-American, and he was asked to stand. He said, I only kneel for one person, and that's God. There are now certain things that seem to be going on here simultaneously. If there are controversies now emerging, if people say all lives matter, which if you believe in God and God's the creator of all of us, and we live in one America, I would say, yeah, of course, every life is precious. Every single one. That's why I cannot for the life of me understand how they don't get control of the violence every weekend. Not some, every weekend in Chicago and other cities. Look at the comments of Drew Brees. Now we're back to the Kaepernick controversy and kneeling. And, it went into this long story about when they play the national anthem at the football game, what it means to him, what he thinks about, and he wouldn't kneel because of his love and respect for even his own family members that, served, fought, bled, and died under that flag. Anyway, we're going to get to your calls this half hour, 800-941-SEAN. We continue with the Reverend C.L. Bryant, author of The Race for Freedom, senior fellow, Freedom Works. Vince Ellison, author of Iron Triangle. He's a conservative columnist, lecturer. I happen to have the same mindset about kneeling. And if you say that, well, that means you're not showing enough respect. I'll kneel with anybody. One of the things I like the most, Vince, is at the end of a football game, because we have two real gladiator sports, right? We have MMA, which everyone knows I love, and football. I mean, these are the best, the most gifted athletes. It's the most dangerous. I mean, the lifespan career period of time in both those sports is not long. And then at the end of these games, you have people of both teams often will get together. They shake hands. Everyone gave their best. They get in a circle. Sometimes even the refs join in and they say a prayer. And they get on their knees and they pray together. I think that is, that's sports unifying everybody. Putting aside that there are ignorant, racist people in this world. We know those people exist. I don't believe that's the majority of anybody. I think they're fringe lunatics. And if they say they're a conservative, I want nothing to do with them because I don't agree with them. But what I'm saying here is if you take a different position on some of these issues, look at what happens.
Well, these people are going to force you they're going to force you into conformity because that's what the left is all about. It's about force. Larry King said that his most memorable interview was an interview of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was integrating a hotel, and when the police officer came and asked him what he wanted, King said, "I want my dignity." Now, I hate that story because it implies that you can get your dignity from another man, and you can't. Your dignity is yours. It comes from God. We went and we did this march in Washington, and we said that we went there to ask the government for our unalienable rights. And it was said there that 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that the Negro is still not free. That is a lie. I was born free, and my freedom was given to me by God. And these young men are being told, looking at all of this stuff and hearing about our marches and whatnot, that this is how they're supposed to go and get their dignity and their freedom and their unalienable rights to go to government. And this is why we are in such a turmoil, because these rights do not come from government. They come from God. They want to go to white people and say, you have to give us our dignity and give us our freedom. You already have your dignity and your freedom. You must exercise them. Your unalienable rights are irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. And right now, we have to go right back to our Bible that says, a tree by the fruit it bears. If the fruit is rotten, the tree is rotten. And if you're looking at the black community, and the black community is saying with its own mouth that our fruit is rotten, you got to go right back to the tree. And what is the tree? The tree is the iron triangle. Most black preachers and most black politicians and most black civic organizers, they are leading and running the black community into the ground, and they're doing it for their white liberal masters. They're no better than the house Negroes that were running, that were part of the antebellum South between 1800 and 1865. They're just an iPod version of it. And they look at what they've done to our people, and they run for re-election every year. James Clyburn has been running for 27 years. The black and the district that he's over is still one of the poorest in the whole country because they're proud of what they've done. And this is why they're there.
But this is the thing, Sean, as well. Having lived, I've drank from colored and white water fountains. I'm 64 years old. I've ridden on the back of the bus, and maybe older than both of you. There was a time in our nation. When there was disparity, and the powers that be, they did seemingly have a control over your personal dignity because you did not have equal access, period. Riding on the back of a bus or drinking from a different water fountain than someone else.
But see, let me jump in and add something here.
In 2020,
because there, for example, and this has been proven in New York, let's say it's a busy night, you can't get a cab. And if a cab driver, there's 3 or 4 groups of people on a block that are waving for a cab, it's been proven that African Americans will get discriminated against. Just look at what the president did. Everybody ignores the disparate sentencing that existed.
Right.
Donald Trump fixed that.
Right.
Then he created opportunity zones, and he created record after record after record low unemployment, and then helped historically black colleges. It didn't happen with Barack or Joe. Right. It happened with Trump. That's
Sean,
the ladder to success for everybody.
There are racists in the country, but the country is not 1960. It is not 1970. It's not 1980. There are racists in America today, but to brand our nation that has come through the things, its dark past to its bright future, and until this coronavirus hit, America was on its way to record hikes, black unemployment, Latino unemployment, opportunities for women. We were on our way to record hikes just to see now that progressives and Democrats are using a crisis, a tragedy, and they have turned it into a farce.
Let me bring in a call here. Okay, finish your thought.
They want us to be divided so that we can be controlled, manipulated. Never have seen Americans so herded like sheep into pens the way we were in these last 2 months. And folks, if you really want to know the truth, when Jesus called the people that he was talking to sheep, he was not giving them a compliment. He was telling them that they were stupid. And that's many times is what we're falling for, is very stupid things in this country.
We are fallen beans. That's just a fact. Carol, Nebraska, you're on with Reverend C.L. Bryant and Vince Ellison. How are you, Carol?
Very good. Thank you. It's a privilege, gentlemen. Very powerful things are being said today. I wanted to add an idea I have. I support President Trump, and I have an idea to flip the tables on who's leading with this issue so that we can actually get something done. The president needs to seize control of the narrative and show how much he cares by calling for a summit. Now, it's kind of what you were talking about, Sean, where non-political black leaders and everyday citizens meet with him and bring their best ideas as to how we change the educational system, job opportunities for people of color, but don't allow any politicians or anyone who has been involved in politics. Remember how Obama had a czar for everything under the sun? So why not a race relations czar and a team from the summit to deal with this head on? And since no solution is one size fits all, let's have each state be plugged into this federal team so they can come up with solutions that fit their constituents and special needs. And I usually, Sean, wouldn't promote more government, but this already involves government institutions like our public schools, which we know are failing our kids, especially those of color. It's an idea for us to take back the narrative and actually listen and get things done. What do you think?
Want to respond? Vince Ellison.
It's a great idea. Anything that we can do to make government more receptive to its people is always good. Jesus actually asked the beggar that had been laying down by the pool for all those years. He said, "Wilt thou be made whole?" Until a person wants to do better, they're not going to do better no matter what the government does. And what we have is a situation where we talk about there's racism, and it does exist, but we can't control it. We can't control who and who is not a racist. My life changed and my family's life changed when we decided that we can't control what people do to us. We can only control how we respond to it. Racism is the same way. It's like the weather. You build a house to protect yourself against the weather. I build a house to protect myself against racism. That's why racists can't touch me. A racist is an ignorant, illiterate person. How can he touch me and I'm a child of God? A racist is a fool. How can he touch me if I'm a child of God? I cannot be a victim. I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. How can you hurt? This is what we have to get back to. I'm not going to beg the government to protect me. I protect myself. I dare one of them to come and try me. I'm a man. I am not a victim. I am not oppressed. I have never seen anyone, no white man superior to me or a black one. I am an heir of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. How dare anyone step to me and look at me and tell me that I'm inferior? If he does, I laugh at him because I know he's a lie. You cannot oppress me. It's an impossibility. I refuse to be your victim. I cannot be. And that's how you defeat racism, by knowing and understand that.
Let me get a quick answer from CL. Thank you for the call, Carol. Go ahead, CL.
Yeah. To speak to her question about dialogue, if we have dialogue, it has to be centered around the right questions. What we have been guilty of in this country is telling a story instead of listening to what people are asking. If you ask the right questions, and you get the right answer, but you have to listen to what people are saying. There are reasons why people feel as though they are being manipulated, and the reason is because they are. We are being manipulated. And, man, I wish we had time to talk about the manipulation of this coronavirus to an incredibly prosperous society. If the masks work, why should we have closed down our country? And if they don't work, why should we have to wear them anyway? I mean, it's something here is missing as far as our common sense approach to who we are as Americans.
I got to let you both go, but we're going to continue this discussion on Hannity tonight, and thank you both. Amazing hour. Reverend C.L. Bryant, Vince Ellison, thank you both for being with us as always, and this conversation will continue. We need to get it right. We need to make sure we get our country on track. One united America, everybody can have an opportunity for success. And we can't, defunding the police, really, we know where that's going to end. It's going to end badly. All right, let's get to our phones. We have Greg, Jared, John Solomon, a whole treasure trove of new information we're going to get to you. Also, we'll bring back Sergeant Demetric Pennies with us. He's actually down running for Congress, and pretty amazing comments he had this weekend in Dallas. But first, we say hi to Brad in Texas. Brad, hi, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, how's it going, Sean?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Hey, so last week I was searching around Google and taking a look at Minneapolis Police Department policies, and I came across one on the MinneapolisMN.gov website, and it's regarding use of force, and it's section 5-311, use of neck restraints and chokeholds. The first thing they do is they go over the definition of a chokehold, and they define it as a deadly force option, defined as applying direct pressure on a person's trachea or airway, front of the neck, blocking or obstructing the airway.
Well, let me just say this, because this was my point when, again, I'm a student of martial arts, and it's an eclectic blend of many of them. There are so many tools available You know how we always talk about continuing education, lifelong learning, and all things like that? Unfortunately, most cities, most municipalities, most towns, the only thing that cops get trained in after they get out of an academy, which is sometimes 6 or 12 weeks, is, they have to qualify in the gun range. So there's not enough options for police officers. They are not trained in non-lethal ways to take control of a situation.
Well, check this out. This out, Sean. So of that policy, the next thing they move on to is neck restraint. They consider that a non-deadly force option, defined as compressing one or both sides of a person's neck with an arm or a leg without applying pressure to the trachea or airway, the front of the neck. Only sworn employees who have received training from the MPD training unit are authorized to use neck restraints. They have two types of neck restraints, a conscious neck restraint and an unconscious neck restraint. The conscious is placed on the neck restraint with an intent to control and not to render the subject unconscious.
Listen, I'm listening very closely. Brad, you're not listening to me. The neck is the most vulnerable part of the human anatomy.
Well, Sean,
if you want to get control, I could do things with your fingers that will put you in full compliance and control and bring you to your knees. They don't know how to do it. These are simple Brazilian jiu-jitsu moves. They're not given the options. I once mentioned BYRNA, and I met these guys once, and they have an alternative. They have a tear gas, pepper spray, firearm option. A lot of cops, their only option is that horrible stun gun, which barely works, or they have their gun. They don't have a lot of options. We need to give them better training and options to, again, not hurt people, not kill people. There are ways to do it. Quick break. Right back. We'll continue.
Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
And we're very happy to welcome to our network Lisa Paige, former FBI lawyer who worked as special counsel for Robert Mueller's legal team. She worked on the Russian government disinformation probe and on the Hillary Clinton email investigation, both, lucky for us, MSNBC analysts.
You signed a warrant application in June of, I think, 2017 to get the Carter Page warrant renewed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you looked at the Horowitz report?
Yes, I have. I have it with me, Senator.
If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application?
No, I would not.
Okay. And the reason you wouldn't have is because Mr. Horowitz found that exculpatory information was withheld from the court. Is that correct?
Among other reasons, yes.
Yeah, and somebody actually altered an email.
Correct.
Right.
The information available at the time included...
Well, why do we have the Mueller investigation at all if we had concluded they weren't working with the Russians?
I don't believe we had concluded it at that time.
I'm saying in January the 4th, 2017, the FBI had discounted Flynn. There was no evidence that Carter Page worked with the Russians. The dossier was a bunch of garbage. And Papadopoulos is all over the place, not knowing he's being recorded, denying working with the Russians. Nobody's ever been prosecuted for working with the Russians. The point is, the whole concept that the campaign was colluding with the Russians, there was no there in August 2017. Do you agree with that general statement or not?
I agree with that general statement.
Thank you.
No there in August of 2017. Now he's admitting a couple of things here. One, knowing what I know now, I shouldn't have signed the third renewal FISA application warrant, which the bulk of information was the dirty dossier. Now, there were warnings before the signing of the first one. Remember, Jim Comey signed 3 of them. And there were warnings all over the place. Don't trust it. Christopher Steele has an agenda. Hillary paid for it. None of it's verified. Says on the top of a FISA warrant, verified. Okay, but then it even got worse by the time we got to the third renewal. Well, they then had interviewed, starting in January 21st, they had interviewed Christopher Steele's subsource. The subsource not only didn't confirm a single thing that Christopher Steele had in the dossier, he said, yeah, this was like bar talk. This was never meant for anybody or anything to be real in any way. Later, we know that Christopher Steele himself denied anything being true inside the dossier. But they used it, and then they lied about it. Adam Schiff lied about it. All of them lied about it. Now, Rosenstein's claiming, well, I didn't read it. I just assumed that it was verified by the agents involved, and that's their job, not my job. Then we see but the subsource already put it to rest. The FBI never proved a darn thing. As a matter of fact, they debunked it. And of course, the exculpatory information that Lindsey Graham is talking about, that's all true. Then they're changing a letter. That was true. And then as it relates to General Flynn, that case was dead. Then as it relates to the exculpatory information, now that we have, for example, the transcript, there's nothing that General Flynn that said that was wrong or incompatible at all with what his soon-to-be new job would be. He was talking to a soon-to-be colleague from another country. Nothing bad was said. Papadopoulos said, I'd call that treason. They put that kid away. And then we got, of course, how they treated Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, and everyone else. And then, how does Rod Rosenstein legally get out of what he did here, Greg Jarrett? I don't see how it's possible.
He blamed everybody else and said, gee, I didn't know. On his very first day as acting Attorney General, the first day as Deputy Attorney General in April of 2017, he should have said, show me the FBI file. He would have received it and noticed that it was incredibly thin because there's nothing in it. There was no evidence of any Trump-Russia collusion. He should have said, tomorrow morning we're having a meeting with Comey, McCabe, Priestap, James Baker, Peter Strzok, Lisa Paige, all gathered in a conference room, and he should have said, show me your evidence. There would have been dead silence. At that point in time, he should have closed the FBI investigation into Trump, Russia, and stepped before microphones and camera and said, there never was any evidence. There's nothing in the files. The people involved have no credible evidence presented. This is over. Instead of doing that, what did he do? The opposite. He escalated and accelerated it by appointing a special counsel in violation of federal regulations. He was not just incompetent, he was malevolent and corrupt.
John Solomon.
Well, listen, Greg has it right. I mean, you have Rod Rosenstein, the head of a giant bureaucratic machine that allowed and sustained an investigation to continue on for nearly 3 years in the absence of any evidence. It's more than just bungling. It's more than just errors. It's more than just excuse-making and passing the buck. You had a willful, knowing effort to sustain an investigation in the absence of evidence that hampered this president's early presidency, misled the American public, and certainly defrauded the FISA court. And for the first time, senators who maybe very early on in this process were doubtful of this theory, now are talking about a conspiracy themselves. And that's why Senator Ron Johnson just dropped 33 subpoenas, or has permission to drop 33 subpoenas. There are 33 bureaucrats that he's now going to be able to question, each one of them, their role. Why didn't they put a stop to it when they had a chance?
Adam Housley tweeted out earlier today, criminal referrals have already been sent to the Justice Department, and the overall number may reach as many as 16 to 17 by the end of next week. Investigators are now working on additional ones as we speak. And some are targeting the Mueller probe and how the Flynn investigation started. And another one from him that came out was that former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein himself is being investigated. Quote, he writes, his testimonies don't really match, but apparently there are emails and known briefings that he received that counter his testimony of what he knew and when he did it and what he did. That doesn't sound good for Rod Rosenstein to me, John. Then we'll go to Greg.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. There were inconsistencies in the first and last time he testified. There are inconsistencies when he gave the speech where he was bragging about people don't know what a FISA is. We all take it seriously. He even had to correct himself in the middle of his own testimony with Senator Graham saying, I read it. Well, actually, I reviewed it. I didn't read it. I think Rod Rosenstein has a testimony problem, as do many of the witnesses who've testified previously, whose testimony now conflicts with the evidence that has been made public.
Greg Jarrett, I mean, you've been going through and going over the different crimes that could potentially come into play here. My sources are telling me that all of the top names that we talk about have all hired these very expensive, high-powered D.C. attorneys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there are so many different crimes that are in play here, and you mentioned Rod Rosenstein's testimony, false statements as well as perjury. He was under oath, sworn to tell the truth. You also have fraud, conspiracy to defraud the government. Most importantly, you have obstruction of justice, hiding evidence, creating false evidence. So, these are all potential crimes. And, there should be more than a dozen people indicted by a grand jury. And I'm optimistic that it will happen.
Now, I watch, like with Rod Rosenstein, on the one end, he's saying they should have done it, they should have done it, they should have done it, but then I did it, but knowing now I wouldn't have done it. But there were other, again, after the 9-month FBI investigation, what did Lisa Paige say? Yeah, we didn't find anything, nothing. What did Strzok say? There's no there. Then the subsource saying, yeah, none of this is true. We talked about this in a bar. Nobody really believed that there were hookers urinating in Donald Trump's bed in Moscow. But yet that was even leaked, to conspiracy theorists David Korn and Michael Isikoff before the election. And now apparently we have this issue of, okay, was CIA Director Brennan, was he feeding this information to Harry Reid, who then writes a letter to Jim Comey? I mean, we got a lot here, John.
Yeah, and one of the patterns that I think keeps showing up in this evidence, and I think has now become a focal point of the Justice Department investigation, is every time the investigation hit a roadblock, the evidence disappeared, it reversed, they found out their theory was wrong. Instead of shutting down, there was a strategic leak to the media to keep the theory going, to keep the narrative going. And I think that criminalization of leaking, that conspiracy to leak to keep a false investigation going, the pattern is becoming more and more clear. And I think it's also become of greater concern to those on the inside investigating with the grand juries.
Where do you think we are, both of you? Greg, I'll ask you first in terms of the Durham investigation. This is well over a year now. He's gone far and wide, and he's expanded the scope. Where do you think, if people are going to be, if there's going to be grand juries formed, do we know about it? If there's going to be indictments, how soon would it be?
Well, you often don't know if there is a grand jury because, of course, it occurs in secret. They're sworn not to talk about it. So that's often, hidden from the public for good reasons. So I do think that Durham has been going full bore. He's a pit bull. He's not biased or prejudiced in any way reputationally. So, I think he is somebody who can be trusted. I know that Bill Barr seems to have sent all kinds of signals that he has been kept abreast of the progress of John Durham. So, I think Adam Housley's reporting, which is generally always accurate and prescient, is probably about right. I think sometime soon, in the next few weeks, we will see unsealed indictments, and contained in the indictments will be the story of the Russia hoax.
And John, do you see it ending and going in that direction also?
I do. I think that the indictments, I think there'll be a small number of indictments that will make a very big, large story. That will lay out a long-running conspiracy to sustain an investigation in the absence of evidence. And I think Greg described it perfectly. I think that's where we're headed. But I don't think it's going to be a lot of people. The guidance I'm getting is a few people, but a narrative that will show everybody's role in the case.
Okay, but here's the thing. This is 3 years. The media in this country and the Democratic Party, they were dragging us through the mud for 3 long years. They don't seem to ever get held to account.
No, they're the unindicted co-conspirators. The Democratic Party, Adam Schiff, and the media, they allowed this narrative to go on because they participated in the conspiracy.
All right, I got to let you both go here. Go ahead, Greg, real quick.
Schiff knew there was no evidence, and for 2.5, 3 years, he lied, saying there was.
Thank you all. And Nunes told the truth. Nobody wanted to hear it. All right, Greg Jarrett, thank you. John Solomon will stay on it when we come back. Sergeant Demetric Penny is going to be on with us, 21-year vet, Dallas Police Force, now running for Congress. We'll talk to him about all the events and defunding the police. All right, let's get back to our busy phones. 800-941-SEAN is our number. Mike Oceanside. Mike, how are you? Glad you called, sir.
Good. How are you? Thank you for taking my call, and what an honor it is to speak with you.
The honor is all mine, sir.
Question. I guess I can say that I'm not happy with Senator Graham on his softball questions, because I remember within the last year he had said that he was going to get to the bottom of this and he was going to be tough on everybody, and then he just asked softball questions to Rod Rosenstein.
Are you kidding? I couldn't disagree with you more. He buried him.
Well,
He got him to admit that everything that we'd been told by the mob and by the Democrats was a lie. He got him to admit that a premeditated fraud on a FISA court happened 4 times. He got him to admit that they had nothing to warrant the special counsel investigation. He got him to admit that all of these people got it on a epic fail, but also on a corrupt failure. He had him there admitting these are crimes. He got every single thing that I would ever wanted to get out of him. It was one of the. I would say that was Lindsey Graham's finest moment, except for maybe Kavanaugh. He did an amazing job, but it's only the beginning.
One of the questions that I wanted to hear was, that Rod Rosenstein said that, he didn't really read the report. Okay, that's great. You didn't read the report, but I guess I would have asked is, okay, you didn't read the report, but this is such a high-profile case. This is the President of the United States and all of his people. How come you didn't read that report?
They did it. Listen, all of that came up in this thing. Look, I think it was Ted Cruz at that point because they get different times. What we learned last week, what we learned in the weeks prior about General Flynn and the things we're going to learn even going forward, just buckle up. Everything's happened. Now, the case is closed now. This was one massive conspiracy theory, corruption, abuse of power. They knew what they were doing, and they knew better than the American people, and they broke the law. Dirty cops. It's all true. You got dirty cop in the Floyd case. What cop would ever put their knee on someone's neck like that? This whole thing is about a few dirty cops, not the rank and file in the FBI. Just like defund the police, okay, we have some bad guys, but most of them are not. They want to protect and serve. But one bad cop can do a lot of damage. The damage here this was an attempted coup in the United States of America. That's how big this now is. They did it with nothing but lies. The whole thing. And we learned that thanks, Lindsey. Look, it took them a long time. There are reasons for that. I hate how slow this is, but we're finally getting it. It's all true. Everything we reported was true. Sad chapter. Now, the next chapter is equal justice and equal application of our laws. Or you might as well take that document from 1787, put it in your shredder because it will be worthless if they're not held to account.
For 21 years. But now, I'm looking to run for U.S. Congress for Texas District 30. This is some unique challenges that we're facing during this time.
Excuse me?
But I want to tell you, I've been on that side before. It's not just happenstance that I decided to be in this position and say I'm going to put my name in the hat to run and change something. I really believe in this. At the age of 16, I witnessed my cousin get killed in front of me. Now, I can tell you that impacted me. And the officers that showed up to my house, they didn't look like me. So you get a narrative that say that these police are racist, that police are out trying to kill us. I got to push back against that a little bit because you know what? It's all about those individual officers, the people that believe in helping people. Those officers that showed up were white officers. They inspired me at that young age to say, I want to do that. Even though my family didn't want to cooperate, they wanted to cooperate, and they treated us properly. I went on to become a Dallas police officer. And I do this because I enjoy people. I love people. It's about the interests of the people. And I think we gotta stop pointing fingers. Let's start looking at our communities. Let's start looking at the socioeconomic issues that are causing us to have the police in our communities. I was a young advocate back then. I didn't want the police in my community. But now I understand why they had to be there. Because we were killing each other. That's the problem. We were killing each other, and we didn't care about the community. We put graffiti everywhere. Hey, I'm still police, so I'm not saying I'll put graffiti. I gotta pull that back a little bit. But listen.
All right, that was from yesterday. Glad you're with us. 24 now till the top of the hour. Sergeant Dimitri Penny is with us, and Doctor of Education, 21-year veteran Dallas police sergeant, president of Dallas, Texas, and the National Fallen Officer Foundation, joins us now. Good to have you back, Sergeant. Thanks for being with us. How are you?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me on, Sean.
These are tough days. I mean, I looked at the video like everybody else. That is the one thing everybody seems to agree on is that, and I know a lot of cops, and I know a lot about martial arts, and I know a lot about self-defense. You don't do that. And we watch this go on for 8+ minutes, and we see now the aftermath of all of this now culminating in this push for, let's get rid of all the police, which I think is a really bad and dangerous idea. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, and in this day and age, to say that we're going to get rid of the police is scary. I mean, I realize how it was when I grew up. And I'm glad you played the clip earlier, because I was saying that before a crowd of 500 people, because I wanted people to hear that it wasn't about the police attacking us. It was about the socioeconomic conditions in our community. It was about us, forcing the police to be there. Now, we have to realize that everyone's not criminals in these communities, and police understand that. If there are agencies that need to put forward criminal justice reform within their agencies to make sure that they are training officers properly on how to deal with the minority communities, then I'm fine with that. But to say that we're going to disband law enforcement, how do you even justify it? There were 18 murders in 24 hours in Chicago this past week.
But this weekend. I want you to repeat that. 18 murders in 24 hours inside, and by the way, if we're going to be honest here, Sergeant, I've been talking about this now all throughout Obama's presidency. It's his home city. They did next to nothing to solve it. If we love our fellow Americans and we're losing people this way every weekend, the idea that nobody has gone in to solve that problem is unforgivable to me.
That's right. That's right. And you know what?
That's beyond a dereliction of duty. And a lot of people getting killed are young people, even kids, some older people, some bystanders. But you can, every weekend you can get your count how many people were shot and how many people were shot dead. And nobody seems to bat an eyelash. Why?
Look, our lower economic communities are the ones that are struggling. Where are these shootings happening at? They're happening in our lower economic communities. So if you want to talk about real change, it has to start by changing the economics in these areas, right? Just listen to the argument about the police reform and defunding police departments, okay? There are three parts of what happened in Minneapolis that we need to pay attention to. There was the issue involving the officers' poor tactics. So if you want to focus on training, focus on training. But there's also the piece where the community came in, where these radicalized groups that operated under this radicalized hashtag, F12, that came in and they burnt down the city. They looted, they rioted, they killed people, okay? That's what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at how in the world did all these groups come together. And I say the third piece is the truth. The truth is all these groups are being manipulated. We're part of this big social experiment that's being put together by these social media platforms. They're pushing all these groups together to force us to fight each other, and we have no control over it. Law enforcement has no way to respond. The people don't realize that they're being manipulated by these narratives, and they're coming out and they're burning down their own cities. It's time that we, as the American people, we push back on that. It's time that we have our governmental leaders step in and take responsibility. We have to change these legislative policies that are broken. We have to reform CDA 230. I've been pushing for this, Sean, since 2017. I called it with the Black Lives Matter, with the shooting attack in Dallas after the Black Lives Matter protest in 2016. I called for it. I said we need to reform social media. Why? Because that's inciting individuals to violence, and no one saw it then. And look at where we are now.
You've got all of these. You got a convergence of a lot of issues here and conflating of a lot of issues here. Now you have the group Black Lives Matter, and now people are saying they support. I don't know if it means to support. I think every life matters. I think we are all children of the very same God. That's my Christian belief, that we are created by one God. Period. All of us. We're one. We should be one united American family. Nobody liked what happened to George Floyd. Now the question is, we have other institutions that, if we're going to be honest, and if you ever want to get to root causes of problems, well, we got to look at decades and decades of failure in terms of bringing out the best in our children in every neighborhood. In other words, the failed educational system that, I mean, we allow that to happen. I remember the movie Lean on Me, and it was a great movie. All right, so it's like, how is it possible? All these big cities have spent all of this money and we've gotten no return on investment because it's not the kids' fault. It's the government that has failed them. And the idea that nobody goes in to fix the horrific school systems in some of these cities, the idea that they allow violence to get out of control and do not police at a level where people can live safely, that's gone on for decades, too. If we're going to be honest here, if we love our American family, we got to go to where the most help is needed quickly. It's sort of like if you get a coronavirus hotspot, you send in like your medical SWAT team. We need a team of people, pastors, church-going members, teachers, anybody that has courage. And we got to now double down on saving generations here because we could do it if we want to.
That's right. That's right. Which is why I said I'm going to take a stance and I'm going to do it head on, Sean. And I'm currently running for U.S. Congress in this district. In one of the districts that everyone told me not to run in. This is the district with all the problems where, it's predominantly African American. We have the highest. We were on the verge of the highest murder rate in the state of Texas at the time that the coronavirus hit. And centrally located in my district. And I decided to put my name in the hat because I know that my interests align with the interests of the people. The only way that it's going to change is to have someone in there that understands how to fix them. And that's why I put forth an economic plan. I got it on my website. I want everyone to go look at it. We want to focus on training, opportunities, economic development. We're tired of asking for government handouts. People don't want government handouts. People want opportunities to get it for themselves. And that's the message that I'm pushing. Nobody gave me a hand up. I did it on my own. I thank God every day for the United States Army because that provided me a way out of the inner city. Thank God for it.
You get one guy. The movie that I referred to, Lean on Me, Morgan Freeman played Joe Clark was the principal of the school. One guy, and look, he was controversial. He had a bat and a bullhorn, but he loved the kids. And first thing he did is, identify all the kids that are getting in trouble, selling drugs, creating chaos, that are violent. You're out. He threw them all out of school. The rest of you want to stay in school? Now you're going to study. And this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to do it together. That's actually a true story.
Amen.
That's one man, one guy that was able to save the lives of kids that he loved. I mean, you can do it if you look. The word education is predicated from the Latin derivative educare, to bring forth from within. That means every one of God's children, they're born with the gifts. Great teachers just bring it out. Everybody has their own unique individual talent and ability. Mine, I guess, is I have a big mouth. That's it. No, but seriously, if we love our children and we believe that I believe we have, in many places around this country, we have failed them. And we stand back and we hear rhetoric after rhetoric. And every year, 4 years, you get the politicians, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. They do nothing. They get nothing accomplished. The best unemployment numbers for all demographics came because of Trump's policies. They were working. Now I think we can institutionalize that and take it a step further and make sure communities are safe and make sure schools are teaching kids to read, write, and do math. Let's stick with the basics.
Stick with the basics. Absolutely.
The fundamentals that you need to succeed in life. The fundamentals aren't getting through, and the numbers don't lie. It's not, and it's this. It is bad governance that has allowed this to go on.
Amen.
If we love these kids, we believe in these kids. Now we owe it to them to protect them. They got to be safe. Then we owe it to them to give them a quality education that allows them to go compete in this free country.
Right.
Anyway,
well,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
This is definitely the time. No, I really appreciate that. Those are great ideas. Those are the exact ideas that I'm putting forward for my community. Look, everyone wants the same for their kids. Everyone wants safe communities. They want their kids to be educated, to go off and do great things. But you know what? As long as you continue to have leaders in place that continue to allow the economic disparity to occur. Now, and I'm simply looking at that district that I'm in. For 28 years, about 85% of economic development has been pushed away from this district. So this district that was already struggling has been forced to deal with lesser and lesser each time. So now you have this system that is broken, and you got all these people that are saying, "Hey, we want."
In your district, how are the schools in your district? What is the percentage in terms of national standards as it relates to reading, writing, and math. In your district, what are the crime percentages? Because you know what, you sound like just the person that could actually go in there and clean it all up and help these kids and believe in them and bring the best out of them.
That's right. In fact, I was just
takes one good person. That's it.
We have a lot of schools in my district, unfortunately, that have not met state standards. They met the state standards for accountability. And this is a part of the whole system of litany of problems that need to be addressed. That I systematically want to go through to address, and a lot of it has to do with bad leadership, a lot of mismanagement. So we got to come in into these systems and identify the measures of fraud and waste and accountability. Simply making sure that our students are learning. We got classrooms right now. The national average for a class size is 15.3. But we got classrooms in this district with 30 kids in it. How can one teacher deal with that? And then you take and you couple the socioeconomic issues and the things that are coming, that are happening to the kids at home, and you throw that into the classroom with it. My God, Sean, I mean, what are we going to do? These teachers are struggling. They're struggling to maintain what they have.
I have a good idea.
And
I think
yes,
the Texas Congressional District 30, I vote for you. I think you sound like you care enough, you love people enough, and you're going to, look, sometimes it's like people talk about Trump's, the way Donald Trump handles things, and that, I want a guy that's going to lead. You go in there and you lead. If you're not teaching your kids in school, you're out. Get out. We'll find somebody that will. They've got to be held accountable. Got to have parental participation. You got to have, these are the fundamentals that we've lost too long ago. That's what bothers me. But all right, so Sergeant Demetric Penny, God bless you. Great to have you back on the program. We wish you luck. This is the Texas Congressional District 30. How can people get in touch with you?
Learn more about me at Penny for Congress, PENNIE for Congress.com.
I don't even know. You running as a Republican or a Democrat?
Man, I'm a Republican.
Oh. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm a registered conservative. All right. Thanks so much, Sergeant. Good to talk to you, my friend. All right. That's going to wrap things up for us today. Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern. We'll be following, whatever's happening around the country as well. Also, Senator Tom Cotton. Wow. Look what happened with him in the New York Times. Ari Fleischer. Oh, Alice Marie Johnson. It's been 2 years since she's been out. Criminal justice reform. Larry and Leo and Dan and Geraldo and Bernie Carrick. 9 Eastern, Hannity tonight, Fox News. Please set your DVR. We'll see you tonight. Back here tomorrow. As always, thanks for being with us.
Hey, young world, the world is yours. It is I, OCT, the producer of the Baller Alert Show podcast, featuring none other than myself
and the kid Ferrari Simmons.
With your favorite Ethiopian Sue Solo.
The Baller Alert Show podcast is here for you, keeping you in the know with the latest of your favorite celebrities, current events, and providing free game to the listeners in need.
So join the talk of the town, because it's going down.
It's the Baller Alert Show podcast, baby.
Don't you ever forget it.
We not only cover the latest in entertainment,
but we bringing you the entertainment directly from the source.
That's right. We have celebrity guest hosts, exclusive interviews,
and it all goes down on the Baller Alert Show podcast. We are your #1 source for the culture.
So like DJ Khaled says, don't ever play yourself. Join the conversation today.
Head on over to the Baller Alert Show and join me, Ferrari Simmons.
Join me, Sue Solo.
And it's all produced by me, OCT, on the Baller Alert Show podcast.
Available on iHeartRadio app,
on Apple Podcasts,
or wherever you get your podcast.